Kelly, is that Norwich CT? Where's CT?
Connecticut in the Northeast.
Yeah. I was just thinking you're in England, in East Anglia, but you know,
No.
just a little way away from there. Yeah. Are we ready to roll?
Sounds great. You ready for the next slide?
Yep, ready when you are.
All right.
I think we're doing introductions now anyway, so while people are still joining us, that's fine. And we've got somebody from South Korea, which is excellent. That's really good. Oh, I just sorry, one sec. Okay. So the agenda today then is we're going to have, I'm just going to briefly talk to you about the organization I'm responsible for, Adults Learning Maths, and then I know Heidi's going to do an introduction on the Adults Learning Numeracy Network. We're going to have some breakout rooms where we're going to discuss the issues that Heidi raises. And we're going to then hopefully, Ido is going to do a marvelous job of taking all the points that we raise from the breakout rooms on the Padlet and bringing us together to have a whole group discussion. I'm really looking forward to this today. It's a really exciting opportunity for us to get together. For when I say us, I mean the Adults Learning Maths research and community, to talk to other people. Can we just move on to the next slide, please, Heidi? Thank you. Okay, let me do a brief introduction about my organization. Once again, I'm delighted that we can join with the Adults Numeracy Network in the US to have this joint discussion. Adults Learning Mathematics is an international research forum, well, a forum which is involved with research, but also everybody involved in it is also involved with practice and with doing projects and undertaking research. But we represent a very wide range of people working in many, many different contexts, from prisons to workplace to schools and colleges. And we also have a membership which spans right around the world now. So it's fantastic. And I'm delighted too to say that we have a membership in this seminar today, which is reflecting that huge attendance from right around the world. So we have attendance from Europe, Canada, North America, South America. I think we might have some today, and of course Australia and New Zealand. So it's delighted to welcome you all, but also delighted to welcome the ALM people who are from there as well. And I know there's a lot of you that aren't in ALM or ANN, but we're really, really pleased to have you here anyway. And I just wanted to briefly say that next year, Adults Learning Mathematics is celebrating its 30th year, and we've been building our knowledge now over that time, and trying to understand what it is that we've been exploring, what adults learning mathematics really means, and how best we can do it, but all at the same time responding to changes in our economic situations, social, technological, and environmental. So a lot of changes that have happened over those 30 years, but we like to think we're up to date with these things and developing new knowledge all the time. Anyway, if you're interested in joining, it would be great. And there's a link at the bottom of the page there for you to click on if you're interested later on. But I'm going to pass you over now to Heidi, who's going to do the main part of this program. And she's going to talk about her organization and then talk about the issue of today. Over to you, Heidi.
Thank you, Beth. Greetings from the Adult Numeracy Network. My name is Heidi Schuler-Jones, and I'm the current president of ANN. I began working in adult education as a teacher in Georgia in the United States in November of 2006, but it took me until April of 2015 before I learned about the Adult Numeracy Network. And unbeknownst to me, I had been the beneficiary of their advocacy and their hard work and their community long before that. It was ANN founding members who developed the most transformative professional development I have ever participated in, the Adult Numeracy Instruction, PD, also known as ANI. which I was fortunate enough to get to pilot in 2010. It was ANN founding members who developed the Empower Math series, which was the only math book series that was developed specifically for adult education, and it taught math conceptually instead of focusing solely on procedural skill and fluency. That PD and those math books forever transformed the way that I approached math and numeracy instruction and the ways that I taught my adult learners. And I continue to stand on the shoulders of those pioneers of adult math and numeracy instruction to this day, and I'm honored to be a part of this magnificent organization. And when I did eventually join ANN in 2015, I realized that I'd found my people. I'd found this network of educators who challenged me to deepen my own understanding of math and numeracy and made space for me to share my experiences and to talk about my ideas and my interests and how that could be a part of that group's work. And as our mission statement notes, and you can see it on the screen, we are first and foremost a community. We're a community that supports each other, and it means that in every sense of the word. We encourage collaboration and leadership, and then we advocate for policy and practice changes throughout adult math instruction. We partner with wonderful organizations like ALM to help spread that information worldwide beyond the borders of the United States. And I don't know about you and your experience in working with adult education, but it can be a really lonely place where many programs have just one teacher sharing with their students at their location. And even in larger programs, there often is maybe one or possibly two math teachers in the entire place. And then, so given those circumstances, it's really hard to know where to go to learn about new resources and to know if your way of teaching math is on par with what others are doing or could be doing. And that's where ANN came in and met that need for me. I heard new ideas. I was exposed to some new tools through ANN. I realized that all the questions I had kind of been holding on to, that those could be shared within this community without hesitation and without fear of judgment. They are by far one of the most welcoming communities I have ever known, and I am truly fortunate to have been mentored by many of the founding members. And I continue to work alongside wonderful leaders who are here to grow the organization and push for continued improvements in adult math and numeracy instruction at the national level. And all of that background and history I give you about how I came to learn about ANN and the work that they do. It leads me to the most substantial work that I've been involved in thus far. In 2017, Donna Curry, who is my mentor and one of the ANN founding members who helped to develop that ANI PD that transformed my instructional practice, and who's one of the co-authors of the Empower Math and Numeracy series, she invited me to write a math curriculum for Massachusetts adult education. And to understand the magnitude of that invitation, you have to understand some key things about my experience of what it's like to teach math and numeracy in adult ed in the United States. And these considerations certainly reflect what it was like for me starting out in adult ed and having worked with hundreds of teachers across the United States who are like me. I can say with confidence that it was not a unique experience just unto me. So when I began teaching in adult ed in 2006, I was given multiple classes spread across 3 different counties and 3 distinctly different settings. All of my math classes were multi-level, meaning none of the students were grouped by assessment scores. So a student reading at a 3rd grade level, for example, was in the same classroom with a student reading at a 9th grade level. I was told I would be teaching all of the subjects of the GED high school equivalency, which at the time had 5 subjects: reading, writing, math, social studies, and science. My new boss pointed to a wall of thrift store bookcases that were sagging under the weight of a bunch of mismatched old workbooks and booklets. And she told me that I could use those for my lessons and for my planning of all of those subjects. but that most of those materials would have to be shared with students because they didn't have enough of any one copy of anything to go around. And when she left the room, she had a huge smile on her face, and she was deeply satisfied and grateful that I'd taken this part-time teaching job. And all I could think was, what in the world have I gotten myself into? This feels overwhelming. But that is the landscape in which I learned about adult education. And that is a snapshot of what I had to teach from and those constraints in which I worked for many, many years before I attended the ANI training and before I started using the Empower math books, neither of which, by the way, provided me a math curriculum, but both of which gave me some really good, solid tools from which I could start building a structure to my semester-long math classes. So when Donna invited me to write a math curriculum, I thought to myself, I want to create the kind of math curriculum I wish I had had that first day when I was shown my adult ed classroom with those old bookcases and mismatched books of materials from which I had to figure out what in the world to teach. The Massachusetts math curriculum we were asked to create was based on a need to help the students testing at the upper end of high stakes assessments to learn the math that they needed to complete their high school equivalency and to enroll in college without developmental education math support. And those who were not looking to go to college, we were tasked with providing them opportunities to learn the skills that the labor market provided and required. So with the help and input from others with whom we worked at the Adult Numeracy Center at Turk in Cambridge, Massachusetts, we set out to develop a math curriculum that taught math conceptually and cohesively across the math domains. It incorporated workforce applications in every unit. It aligned to our standards, which we use the College and Career Readiness Standards for Adult Education, which also includes 8 mathematical practices that really are about helping students to collaborate and share ideas and strategies and compare their reasoning with their peers, more than just producing answers, for example. And so when we finished that 9-unit curriculum, we piloted it later that year. And when we piloted it, we realized that the students we had developed this for, who were pre-testing at that grade level equivalent of 9 through 12, that high school grade level, they were really struggling with the foundational concepts that we really had included more of a review for than intensive learning experiences. And so we recognized that these gaps in their foundation were creating these obstacles to understanding the math they needed to pass those high school equivalency tests and to enter college or a career. So we went back to the drawing board, and with the help of another ANN member, Sarah Lomberg-Glue, we began adding more supports and more activities and more concrete ways to understand the math properties and the number and operation sense. And when we'd finished all of those revisions, the curriculum became a stronger tool for working not just with students testing at the highest levels, but also those learners who were pre-testing at a grade level equivalent of 3 through 8. In the United States, we call that ABE, Adult Basic Education students. And after months of restructuring and expanding that original 9-unit curriculum into a 22-unit curriculum, we piloted that new version. We took feedback from the pilot teachers, and we made additional adjustments. And then we officially launched the curriculum for adults learning math, known as CALM, back in September of 2019. And along with the curriculum, we also provided intensive in-person professional development. It's now offered virtually as well, to every teacher and program interested in using CALM in Massachusetts. We also began delivering that PD in other states around the United States, helping teachers to learn about teaching math conceptually and how to teach with concrete objects and visual tools, and how to work with a structured math curriculum. And what we've learned in the few years that we have had this out in the field is that while teachers are really excited to finally have a comprehensive math curriculum, with a scope and sequence that reflects units, that have really detailed lesson plans that are tied to objectives, and they have all the materials connected, wrapped up in a nice bow. Everything they need is there. Teachers are really still struggling to use it, given the multitude of constraints that seem to exist in every single adult education program we seem to encounter. But those constraints were not new to us. We knew them from the start. In fact, when we wrote the introduction to CALM, the very first sentence in CALM's introduction states a lot of these. This is what it says: class time, planning time, inconsistent attendance, multi-level classes, math anxieties for students and teachers. Each one of these alone can be an obstacle for teaching adult learners. Combined, they can be overwhelming and seemingly insurmountable in their effects on instruction with adults. That's how we introduced CALM, acknowledging the very things we knew persisted in adult education long before CALM was even an idea. And yet our expectation was that CALM could still work. We had seen in our efforts with ANI and Empower that teaching math conceptually was a means of changing habits of mind and facilitating growth mindset for students and teachers alike, who often labeled themselves as not being good at math or not being a math person. And we knew having a structured math curriculum that showed those connections between algebraic reasoning and geometry and measurement, as well as learning basic multiplication tables. We knew it was a novel way to teach math, but we also knew that the level of support we included in those lesson plans, along with the professional development, could really help teachers to see more ways to teach math than just the memorized procedures and tricks that so many of us grew up learning. And yet, we see and we hear from programs and educators that it is too difficult to use a structured curriculum or to teach math conceptually because it seems to take more time to do all those experiences and discoveries and collaboration with those activities. In the end, many teachers ultimately pull from different parts of the curriculum on occasion, but they still feel compelled to use the bulk of their direct instruction time to teach procedures. And I'm not faulting them for feeling that way. I know those pressures. I know the enormous list of tasks on their plate because I have been in that role. I'm also not saying that teaching math procedurally as a procedural skill and fluency that's wrong, because it's not, but it does represent only one of three pieces of rigor. The other two components of rigor are about real-world applications and teaching math conceptually. And if all we make time for is one of those three elements of rigor, then we really do miss the opportunity to help students become mathematically proficient and to see math as more than just a means to an end for a high-stakes test or for some educational credential. So I'm coming to you today as my colleagues and my fellow students and teachers of math. I'm seeking your guidance on what we can do to help overcome these constraints, to help teachers make use of structured math curriculum, whether it's CALM or some curriculum that's been developed by their state or their region or their local program. I'm coming to you to help identify a way to balance this strong teaching and quality resources with the demands from assessments and individual student needs. Perhaps within this community that's joined us today, that there are even more obstacles to name and to talk about and to share those experiences of our own challenges of teaching math and something as structured as a math curriculum. We need to hear from you. And perhaps within the same community, there are solutions to these challenges that have worked for your program that's been using a structured curriculum. We also need to hear from you. No one person and no one thing is the cause of these challenges. So it's going to take multiple approaches and multiple perspectives to find a way to affect some change. And that's why we're having this conversation with all of you today. So in a moment, we're going to split off into breakout rooms, and we've prepared 3 questions that we'd like you to consider during the time in your small group. We are going to use a Padlet, which if you're new to the Padlet, I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. Eric, I believe, is going to drop the link into the chat. But in those small groups, we really would like you to dig into these 3 questions, and they will be shown on the Padlet for you. How does this topic I've presented resonate with you? How does it impact your program or your type of work, your research or your professional development? Share your stories and your experiences, as I have just done, and then spend some time kind of digging into what's the cause of it. Why is it happening? How can we really get our finger on the pulse of what's causing this? What factors are contributing? And naming those and organizing that might help us to get to that final question of what is it that we can do about them all. We hope in each of the breakout rooms to have a representative from ANN or ALM to serve as the note taker for the Padlet. But if you find in there's not someone within those 2 organizations who's able to do that, and you are comfortable using Padlet, please step up and be the note taker for your group. We will be sharing the Padlet with you at the close of this, along with recording of this session and an evaluation. So you'll have access to this long after it's completed. We'll send that out by email. At the close of the breakout rooms, we'll come back together in this main room, and Ido Gall, who has been one of those founding members from the very beginning and is also within the Adults Learning Mathematics, he's going to share a summary of the themes that are presented on the Padlet. So he has an enormous task, and I'm thankful that is not me to do. After he shares the themes that he sees, Brooke Istis, who also represents both of these organizations, she's going to share a bit about her experience working as the moderator of the Links Math and Numeracy community and a recent coffee break where they were addressing some of these same issues. So before we go into the breakout, let me just do a quick share of how to use Padlet. If you are new to Padlet, this is where the link will take you. You'll see the same 3 questions across the top. The plus sign under any of these will open up a window that allows you to just begin typing your feedback. And when you finish what it is you would like to share, you just click publish and it posts directly in here. Underneath, you can also go back and click those 3 little dots, and that'll let you open and do some editing. You can also change the background color to make it stand out. So Eric, are there any things in the chat that I need to address before we go into breakouts?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
We're ready.
Great. How long are we in the breakout, roughly?
Almost a little less than 20 minutes.
Okay. So Eric is going to open up breakouts and let us move into those conversations. See you back soon.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm Ido Gal. I'm from Haifa, Israel. I used to live in Philadelphia for about 10 years, and I used to be pretty familiar with the adult education system in the USA and following up on the developments in some other countries. So I was given the very challenging task of trying to summarize entries on a Padlet that are too many to read in the short time that I had, and trying to make sense of all of this. So I'm not sure that I'm going to do justice to what appears here. Many of the points are very powerful and speak for themselves. If you're looking at the Padlet itself and not necessarily listening to me, you can see that the left-hand side, how does this problem of curriculum adoption or the usage of a curriculum that is offered by a system of adult education, this problem seems to resonate very much with most of the participants here, and the reasons why it is hard to implement it or adopt it are in fact quite well known for quite some time. Regarding the pressures on teachers, the diversity of different kinds of teachers with limited training or prior background, the need to accommodate students or learners who are at different levels and with different kinds of expectations and so on and so forth. So this definitely, the issue of curriculum adoption is something that the participants here feel very much is an issue that needs to be acknowledged. And also hearing the voices from other countries. I've seen entries from Sweden and a couple of other countries relate to the meaning of a curriculum that has children in mind and not necessarily adults, or that is unified and is not adaptable to different types of learners. And so I think when we take a broad view of all the points that are raised on the different questions here, we recognize that although a lot of time and effort is invested in developing a curriculum, and we heard from Heidi how complex it was to design a good curriculum, test it in the field, provide professional development opportunities for teachers in different places, face-to-face and online. Although a lot of effort and resources are invested in it, the result might be dissatisfactory for the people who designed it, and even for the teachers in the field. And so the question is, what can we do about it? How can we improve curriculum adoption? Especially when teachers may feel that their students require somewhat different solutions or different emphasis than what the curriculum provides. And so I think that as we move forward, we need to consider the constraints and problems that appear here. For instance, what kind of professional development is provided to teachers? How often does it is it being given, and how accessible it is to teachers in different places? I participated in one of the breakout rooms, and one of the participants talked about the daily challenges of preparing tomorrow's lesson and how challenging it is to try and navigate between many different units of a curriculum and decide what to do when she said, I don't feel that I have a flow yet to go with the curriculum and adapt it. And so I think that as a community, we need to find a way to continue and discuss the issues that come up when there is a curriculum, either on a national level or on a state or regional level or a city level, because different countries would have different situations. United States has one system, but there are other countries that have very different approaches to organize adult education. And so we need to think of ways to think of how to improve curriculum adoption and recognize the barriers ahead of time and prepare solutions for at least some of them. So I suggest that I stop here. I gave myself enough rope to be hanged on because I'm not sure that I'm doing justice to all the points that appear here, but at least I hope that I provided some overview of some of the issues that came up, and the group can take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ido. Excellent. I think you did a remarkable job there, considering the time you had.
So I have been tasked to talk about, well, let me say I'm Brooke Estes, and I am the moderator for the Links Math and Numeracy Community of Practice for Octave. And in November, we actually held an informal discussion, which a coffee break is really just an informal meeting of colleagues, practitioners, and the question was asked, with so much to teach, where should I start? And it was kind of interesting because when we started talking about doing this presentation, I was like, oh, well, we're getting ready to have this topic discussion anyway. So a lot of the themes that came out in the Padlet were things that I saw in this discussion. I just put down a couple things that the practitioners who attended the webinar, they did speak about how they always begin at the beginning with competition with their students. And everyone seemed to really like that idea. And these are practitioners primarily that attended this. And they all talked about how they start with addition and math facts and we just were having an informal discussion because of the idea that there just wasn't enough time. And I saw that in the Padlet that came up as a theme over and over again about time. And it does seem that many of our teachers feel this time constraint. And I think that's driven a lot by the students. Many of the practitioners that attended the meeting stated that, their students only wanted to be there as long as they had to be there. A few of them had mentioned about how we have a practice test to see if students are ready to take our curriculum or our GED or HiSET test, and it's called the GED Ready. And a lot of students just wanted to take the GED Ready over and over again until they just could master all those skills. So I think a lot of the things that were mentioned in the Padlet about time, student buy-in, not knowing where to start, those were all things that were suggested and in the coffee break, and they resonate really well with what was said. Also, there's a link there to join the community of practice. Anybody can join. It is a free community. So I'll post that in the chat.
Beth, I think we are back to you.
Oh, right, great. Is there any other comments that anybody wants to make before we sort of try and pull out some ideas and things? I mean, is one of the things we were thinking about, is there a next step for this conversation? Like, is there anything else we can do about it? Would we want to study it? Would it be interesting to study it from different perspectives in different countries and actually see what those experiences are and whether we actually learn anything from that, or whether it's just differences because there are differences in the way things are done? Yes.
I was going to say, and people are welcome to unmute if they want to share or type in the chat.
I'll unmute. I'm really fired up right now. So I've been thinking about this a lot and in different ways. And I would love to, to dive deeper and to figure out more about mindsets around it and why teaching conceptually is considered not effective or efficient, and how I feel like we have to understand understanding our audience, and our audience can change. And I'm kind of speaking from my own experience, but like, what are people's true objections, right? Like, what is at the heart of people's objections to teaching conceptually, to making time for it, to having to adapt curriculum to work for our settings? And I can lump myself in there as well, because I was a teacher in the classroom for 10 years in adult education, and those constraints are very, very real. But the staying with teaching procedurally or focusing merely on computation or mostly on those surface level skills doesn't serve our students in the long run. And so there has to be a change, but how we go about that, I think we really have to understand the heart of why people are objecting so much, So I don't know, I can't really articulate what I'm thinking, but yes, please, I would love for there to be study about it.
So when you say, I'm not sure who I'm speaking to actually, but
Lindsay Poost. Sorry,
Lindsay.
my video is on.
Yeah, that's fine, Lindsay. When you say study it, is it studying because the work group I was in, there seemed to be quite a lot of positivity around using it, but it was the size of the curriculum that was the most was making things more complicated, it seemed, to support their teaching.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think maybe I'm talking about perhaps a tangential issue then around more of the teachers who are pushing back on using a curriculum or making or deciding how it won't work, or teaching from a conceptual standpoint versus more procedural. So perhaps either it's the fear around teaching math, not understanding it from the student perspective, teaching it the way we've always been taught. But where I am, I feel that there are a lot of people who think numeracy is incredibly important, people meaning teachers, administrators, thinking that numeracy is incredibly important. However, actually implementing it just doesn't work. We don't have time for it. It takes too long. I feel like there's a lot of excuses, for lack of a better word. And I want to figure out how to help alleviate whatever problems are associated with those excuses, because I think our students deserve a great numeracy education and access to numeracy, because I think it affects access.
Yeah, but I think maybe it might be more, there might be more to it than maybe excuses. I think Fiona wants to come in on this. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Beth. Some of it actually, Lindsay has already just communicated. Like, I think a big part of it is teaching the way you were taught yourself, being maybe, the model that you're using, and like the focus on procedural, but also something that I think it's Rebecca has put in to the chat, that I wrote a piece recently with a group of researchers about like the fear of being caught out, in inverted commas, for maybe not having the conceptual understanding fully of the content that you're teaching. And I think there needs to be huge support for numeracy teachers and all teachers of maths, that it's okay if you don't fully get it because maybe you were never taught it, but now let's figure it out. And a support around that, I think maybe establishing that it's okay as a numeracy tutor to not be in that place right now, but how do we get there? And maybe, modeling certain things could be a way to start. I know in an Irish context anyway, that's been really successful, by giving people the space to say, actually, I don't really get this myself. I don't know the why part. And it's the support around that I think will be helpful.
Yeah, I think you got a positive response to that one, Fiona. I think it's absolutely right. The people, when we have to start, all teachers start from a starting point that they understand. And if you've been taught in a procedural way, then that's the way you start teaching, isn't it? But then you can move on, and that's hopefully what we can do, is help people to move on from that position.
Yeah.
Does anybody?
I think Jamal was trying to raise a hand.
Yeah.
I was. One of the things that I see constantly or consistently is the pushback from the position of, we've done this for 99 years in 2 dark days. And so the ideology of change, or being resistant to change, shall I say, is what kind of makes it difficult for some of the more traditional teachers. And I can say that because coming into it new, one of the things that was, for me, eye-opening was understanding teaching math from a conceptual position, because my lead teacher does mental math and I do mental math. And then one of the things I learned was, let me make it relevant to the student. So if I have a class that 60% of them work construction. So if we're working fractions, I said to them, hey, listen, you know how to convert a board when you have to make a cut on a board from 5 feet 7/16 to 6 feet 8 inches. You know how to do that. Oh yeah, well, it's simple math, just da. Okay, so from here on in, every fraction you see, it's a board. And instantly they got it, because it was taught conceptually, as opposed to, all right, half of a half is a quarter, half of a quarter is an eighth, half of an eighth is a 16th. They didn't get that. And so one of my teachers was like, I don't understand how you got them to learn it. And I've been doing this with them for 8 months and they couldn't get it. It was because you refuse to change your mentality on how to teach. And so that pushback sometimes is the excuse because they think that I've had success before does not mean you'll have success now, because these students are different. They're different than your traditional quote unquote K through 12 learner. With that, I yield.
Yeah, Jamal, you make a very strong point there, which is so true. It's making the learning relevant to the adults. And once they, and going from where they are, rather than going from where you might be or where you might have started. So you're starting with the student's knowledge and then working from there. I think those are really very profound points as well that you've raised there. Who is it, Mark? I think a lot of teachers make sense of efficacy. Oops.
Yeah, Jamal, there's
Linda?
there's lots of interview data from learners, exactly what you're talking about, like the carpenters that from your example, who then say, oh, well, that's not math, that's just common sense, because it makes so much sense to them. And and so helping people find the stuff that they think is just common sense because it has so much meaning, and having it connect to the math, in other settings, like when you said, just assume that all those fractions are boards and then it makes sense to you, is something, and that's a situation that's meaningful with adult learners that isn't particularly relevant with kids because they don't have all those experiences that adults show up with.
Before we move on to another, I just want to say that for those who have to jump off, I understand, and those who want to keep this conversation going, we'll stay on a little longer. One other thing I want to throw out there is I think assessment is part of it's what's driving the conversation. It's the tail wagging the dog. I think what's missing in that is we need some research on where's the evidence that shows that high stakes assessments aren't poorly impacted by teaching math beyond the procedures. And again, not to say procedures shouldn't be taught, because they do need to be taught, but we need to explore other ways of representing that. So I'm in favor of definitely, let's keep thinking on this.
Yeah, it's a big topic, actually, isn't it? I know ALM has got some quite a bit of research on different ways, different approaches to teaching and learning, and to motivation for learners, which is a key part of it, adult learners, and the sort of recognizing their different experiences. So we're not just simply starting at the beginning, just starting at fractions again and working our way through, but actually moving from their experiences. But I'm not sure how we do the next steps on this. Maybe it's something for ALM and ANN to go away and think about, and have a think about how we might take that next step with these ideas. Does that seem reasonable? Because
Yes.
I'm not sure.
I think, we won't solve the world's problems here in this 1 hour workshop or seminar, but I think some follow-up conversations are warranted. And it sounds like from those who are here today that we have some people who've experienced this and may have some new insights into what is working and what could change. So perhaps in our follow-up email, people can share those through the evaluation as well.
Yeah.
Beth or Ido, do either of you want to talk about this, what's on the slide for your upcoming?
I'd like to. Yeah, please. If I can just say that, just reinforce what you said there, Heidi, that we've got a feedback form coming out from here. So if you've got ideas about other seminars that you think might be useful for ALM and ANN to do together, or separately for that matter, you could do it on your own organizations, or any other ideas about how to take these ideas forward, that would be brilliant. We've just put them in the feedback and then we can mull over them. And I just wanted to share with you that ALM is doing another seminar in February, and we've got people talking about teaching maths in prisons, and we've got actually we've got more than 3 speakers now, but the speakers, we've got 1 speaker talking from the US. I think it's 2 people talking from some EU countries. I'm not sure which one. I think it might be Poland, and we have another member who's talking about their experiences in Tasmania. And what they always say is something that came up earlier, is that although teachers of maths in prisons are usually very lonely people because they're on their own, they have created quite a strong topic group within ALM, where a whole group of teachers from right around the world are getting together to discuss the issues, barriers, challenges, and opportunities teaching in prisons. So if anybody's interested in that, we're doing that one in February, and you can get the link on the ALM website.
And that will go out in that follow-up email as well. We can share. We'll have the links to those in our follow-up.
Great. Can I just say thank you all very much from my perspective. Thank you, ANN, for hosting this. You've been fantastic hosts. It's been really interesting having this discussion, and I do hope that we can have some future sessions like this, because it's just great to be able to share ideas and find that common purpose together right around the world.
Agreed, 100% there. Eric, do you care to share about this posting for ANN?
I'll say a word about it, though, unless Mark is still here. If Mark's still here, it would be better if he was able to talk about it. Are you here, Mark?
I think he is not.
Okay. Or Dee, why don't you talk about it?
Sure. So we have this upcoming workshop coming. We have a series that we've done. This will be the 2nd time we've run it, called Math for Identity and Belonging in Community. And this is one where we specifically focus on representing data, and it's collecting data the way that you want to collect it, data that's meaningful to you. And then we're going to learn about lots of different interesting ways to represent that data. And so we're very excited to pull folks together to do that. And you are all welcome to join us.
Is there a cost to this?
There is not. It is free, F-R-E-E.
Thank you, Dee. All right. If you haven't seen in the chat, I hope that you've seen the links to these 2 wonderful organizations to, if you are so inclined to join us and become a member, or just to seek out the insights and wisdom from this group when it's needed, and then join the conversations to support you, as it was a great experience for me, and it certainly has impacted the work that I get to do. I will close us out, and for those who want to stay on and have continued conversation, those of us who can will stay, but I appreciate everybody being a part of this today. Thank you so much.